So hello, we're right where we left off. Again, so trend lines, like what I said earlier, if you remember, supports, right? Trend lines, especially uptrends, they act as very strong supports and resistances, right? These tell you if the stock's gonna go up and generally provide levels where to buy, right? Um, However, though, once obviously the trend line is broken, then that's cause for concern. As you can see, it goes up, and then oh no, the trend line's broken and it goes down, right? So you wonder, oh, can trend lines only be drawn for uptrends? No, you can actually also draw them for downtrends. What's a bad stock? Oh, let's go back to Viela. What our example earlier, right? So you see here, absolute downtrends, very easy. If earlier it was drawing from the lower, from the open of a lower green candle to the open of a higher green candle, here it's the same thing, only in reverse. It's the open of a, whoops, let's make it red. Let's say it's from the open of a higher red candle to the open of a lower red candle, right? So as you can see here, right, things to note when drawing your trend lines here, and like in Ayala, like when we drew earlier, notice that I did not cut the candle body. Cutting the candle body means putting the trend line somewhere like this, right? Or it doesn't even need to be like that, right? Generally cutting the candle body is not suggested, since that will dilute the usefulness of the trend line, right? Because that open and close, that box that you see there, that's the actual price action for the day, right? What I mean from price action, that's the actual difference between the open and the close of the price of that stock for that day, right? And if you cut it, then you're either you're going to mess up the conclusions that you're going to be drawing, right? Also, you see here that I cut the tails, and here also I cut the wicks. Generally, it's because the open and the close, they're very, or rather, the open and the close, the high and the low, which are represented by the wicks and the tails, they are generally very susceptible to intraday price movements. Meaning, within one day, it can go really up, really high, then really low, then even lower, then it goes back up again, right? Stocks are very volatile, right? And here you can see that by eliminating those erratic price movements, you're able to draw a clearer picture of what the stock is, what it's telling you right now, and what your plan is going to be, right? So moving on from trend lines and basic support resistance, let's go into some basic indicators, right? So the obvious favorite one, let's go to PXEI again. Obvious favorite one, let's go to indicators. So you guess is what? MACD, right? MACD, it's called the Moving Average Convergence Divergence. Now, what this does is it measures the strength, it measures the strength of the stock, right? The strength of the movement of the stock, right? So here, when you see this gigantic move, right, you see here in the blue line on the lower one, it you see the large gap between the two and the large histogram, right? That tells you that the stock price is moving very heavily. Um, Another similar example, M wide. You can see here the histogram was really high, right? So what's the usefulness of the MACD? I suggest you guys to read on it further. There are a lot of tools over there, but basically, what the MACD will tell you is how the price of the stock should be behaving based on its supply and demand, right? Because the thing about the MACD is that it sorry, how do you put this? It tells you a picture of the stock supply and demand through the moving averages, which I'll be getting onto later, right? Which I should actually have put on first. But anyways, right, we're already here, right? So I suggest you guys read on it further, right? Similarly, another useful, very useful one, personally that I use is the uh, ADX, right? You find that by going here, searching for the directional moving index (DMI), right? The ADX is this red line over here, right? Whoops. Let's take that out, or take that out, right? That's this red line over here. Similar to earlier, this measures the strength of a trend. Like let's say here, when the stock price is moving up, 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 you can see that the ADX, or the average directional index, is moving up, up, up as well. But the moment it started to plateau, so did the average directional index. Now the thing is, what it does, generally a benchmark, anything above 50, but anything above 50 is unsustainable. So when you see this, it's up here, right, and it's holding above. Generally, that's a sign to sell. However, MY, bad example for that, since the people were very hyped about this stock, right? But again, I suggest you guys read more on this. Right? Another popular one is the relative strength index, or the RSI, similar to the average directional index. It tells you how overbought or oversold a certain stock is, right? Or rather, not similarly, um, as opposed to the other one where it just showed you the strength. This one shows you the strength and whether or not it's in overbought or oversold conditions, right? So if it's above this purple box here, that means it's oversold, or rather overbought, right? People are getting too hyped about it. Then if it's below it, like let's say here, VLL, right? It's below the lower box, that means it's oversold. That means it's a good opportunity to buy. But again, caveat, learn to, these indicators aren't absolutes, right? Another popular one is obviously stochastics. Stochastics measure how range, whether or not the company is ranging or not, right? Generally, this, if you see this, it's very messy. It doesn't go into oversold, overbought. That means that the stock is ranging, right? If it's compared to M wide, right? You can see here again. It also tells you overbought, oversold. Generally, again, if it's above the purple box, it's overbought, which means people are buying it too much. And if it's here below the below the purple box, then that means it's oversold. Again, I suggest you research on this more. These are very helpful, right? Um, Moving on to the most important indicator that I have is to teach is the moving average, right? So how do you plot the moving average? You see here the indicator. You have this moving average here, right? So what is a moving average? A moving average is literally the last X amount of prices added up all together and then divided by however many periods it was. So here, let's make it 200, right? 200. That means over the past 200 days, that is the last price, right? Um, Thing of note, these moving averages, the 200 thing I mentioned earlier, they're not just random. How many in a week? There are 5 trading days. So when you put 5 there in your moving average, that is a week. If you put 10, it's 2 weeks. If you put 20, it's a month. If you put 50, it's a quarter of a year. If you put 100, it's a half of a year. And if you put 200, it's the whole year, right? So let's put a 50 just so I can show you guys, right here. Generally, the shorter the term of the moving average, the faster it responds to stock prices, right? Because obviously, the longer the stock price, the longer the moving average is, that means it has to take into account more data. That means past prices are not being removed as quickly. So that means the moving average will lag significantly as opposed to if you use a shorter moving average, right? So one thing of note, let's remove this second moving average, and I will continue this in my next one.